Little did the dog know that the quick brown fox had venomous fangs.
Venomous fangs.
The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. The lazy dog jumped up and startled, only to bump into the quick brown fox. The quick brown
hit
fox
that button.
grabbed
He hit the button, and now
the dog.
this is his presentation.
So we're live.
Yeah, just we're.
Was that Jason that did that?
We hit
No, it was not me.
I didn't hit anything.
I hit nothing. This is gonna be a lot of pre-show.
Someone hit the button.
Someone hit the button.
The one cool thing I did like was Danny DeVito read the Lorax.
No.
So he did this whole webinar thing where he actually like went in and you know read the Lorax to the kids and stuff like that. And so it was actually really neat. Let me tell you, my kids love it. They're like, Dad, please read me more Kerberos RFC, please. What were the ticket options again?
Is it bedtime? Like fits them to sleep?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's the bedtime stuff where they're like, Dad, tell me about 0x608-10010 again. I love that part of the story.
Sheep, that doesn't work.
It's the precipice when the dad jokes are no longer funny, but they still laugh.
It's still a sad day, right?
Yeah.
Let me explain it to you. Let me explain why that's funny.
Yeah. And then they're like, hey, can I do something? And I'm like, well, let me explain it to you. And you're like, thanks, Dad. And then they walk away. Like they don't even trust me anymore that I'm actually going to give them a serious answer, which I'm not. But you know,
I think you've arrived then if they expect you to be funny.
yeah. They're like, okay, whatever. I keep telling them that even though they hate my jokes or they say they hate my jokes, they love them, and then they are storing them up for when they are dads, but they don't.
And they'll call you. They'll be like, I told that one and it didn't go well. How did you tell it? And
exactly.
Share your knowledge. Yeah. When you're that's great. That is great.
I will tell you, I can break into just about any company, but I cannot schedule a calendar invite for the life of me. So like I can break into anything, but I can't get a meeting invite at the right date and the right time. It's impossible. It's impossible. Do it. Yeah, no. Forget it.
Yeah. No, people are showing up 2 hours early. Yeah. You're not alone.
The pets of Wild West Hackin Fest.
The pets. Mine just sleeps underneath my desk.
John pulls a cow in from the pasture.
Oh, Bessie.
He's really very nice.
Is that a cat? That sounds like it was like killing something.
I will kill all of you.
He doesn't like the camera. I'm sorry.
Oh.
See?
Here's this one.
Oh, hey, Piper.
Yeah, she's not a lap dog, but oh, your dog's so cute.
He is. They both are. Did you see the other one?
No. Yeah.
That's CeeLo.
Squish little face.
Hi, CeeLo. See, he's not camera shy. This one is. This is Marla.
Interesting.
I just like the fact that he's like.
It did sound like a cat killing you.
All right, welcome to the official pre-show banter, everybody.
The official pre-show banter.
So we got Ben here and Larry here.
Not the webcast, guys.
From TrustedSec. What is TrustedSec? What do you guys do? I've never heard of it. What is that?
We are website designers. And we're also social personality media instructors. We are also user awareness advocacy speakers. So we're big on all of that. No, we're a penetration testing company. So, but the funny thing is we do everything I just said. We do build websites. Right. We do impersonate people. A lot of different things. And
I was hoping you were going to say you create underwear or like your clothing company.
I mean, if that's what it takes to get into your company, yes, I create underwear.
Well, you do have those socks, which are technically underwear. So yeah,
yeah.
it's an easy pivot.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
Are socks considered underwear?
This feels like is a hot dog a sandwich? Like it feels like that's the same
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Cereal soup.
Yeah.
Cereal soup. I've never heard that one.
Is it?
It's cold soup, right?
I mean,
It
there
is.
is cold soup. So, but I mean, like a lot of Korean dishes, they have a lot of cold soups. So,
There's that Italian one that's made of tomato.
Gazpacho.
That one. That's a cold soup.
yeah.
And it's not cereal.
Did you say end the webinar?
And the
End of
program?
I am leaving the webinar.
Goodness, that's a whole nother story of why we have to say that all the time. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have Ben and Larry. I know it's a little bit before the top of the hour, but I'm going to go ahead and get out of here so you guys can present.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.
Yay.
Oh, we got it. I got the tags. Okay, so welcome to the webinar here on how we can increase your security posture. For those who don't know, my name is Ben Mauch. I'm actually known as Ben 10. Most people know me as Ben 10 because they don't know how to pronounce my last name. So I have been in security for quite a while. I spent 13 years on the defensive side, worked in medical billing and worked with hospitals and securing back in Windows 98 days. So I spent a lot of time on the defense and then switched over to the offense, and I've been doing offense for the past 6 years and coming up on 5 years here at TrustedSec, leading the defense and countermeasures team. Now I'll let Larry introduce yourself.
Hello, my name's Larry Spohn. I've been with TrustedSec for about 7 years now. Practice lead for what we call our force team. We do the basic pen testing things such as external, internal pen tests, social engineering, physical, those type of attacks. I come from a sysadmin background. Before I worked at here at TrustedSec, I worked at a bank called AmTrust in Cleveland for about 5 years. I worked at a company called Diebold in North Canton. They make ATM security systems for banks. Worked there for about 12 years. So Ben and I have been teaching this class somewhere around 5 years, something like that. It's evolved over the years. It started out more as a intro to pen testing type course. Of course, we promoted it as good for guys on offense and defense to join in, because obviously on both sides, to be better at offense, it's good to know what the defense guys are doing, and same as the other way around. So the more we taught this, there's a lot more blue teamers that came in asking about specific questions of how to actually detect some of these things. So Ben went to the drawing board and really revamped the course over the past year or two. Put a lot of hands-on stuff to get your hands dirty and figure out how to detect some of the stuff that we're doing. So thanks for joining, and I'll pass it over to Ben here.
Awesome. So I did want to just mention, even though that we're going to be doing mostly hands-on stuff, I did want to show one thing from our deck that you would see if you actually join the class. Is a little bit about some of the defense stuff. So one of the things that we look at when we talk about defense, and kind of going back to what Larry's point were, is when we do our defense engagements, and when we look at a lot of the things that are happening within an organization, one of the things that we find is that organizations are very reliant upon tools which claim to be able to stop and detect a lot of the activity that we do, and a lot of tools do a really good job. Some of them, however, they're looking for specific signatures, and what Larry and I focus on is how we go about a pen test oftentimes without using a single exploit. And a lot of the tools that are out there are looking for a lot of those exploits, or they're looking for a specific payload. Being in defense, and I went to school for development programming, so I know C# and all the different languages and stuff, and so there's a lot of things within the Windows environment that aren't an exploit, but we use them to our advantage. And so a lot of the things that we do when we do our class is we're going to show you how we can be successful as a penetration tester to avoid a lot of those EDR tools and gain access to a system, but at the same time, how to detect something like that. And so we really focus on these defensive methodologies of detection, speaks for itself, deflection, things that stop the attack. So it's going to be your antivirus or your EDR. And then the third one is going to be deterrence, things that actually deter an attacker to go to a different location, something like a honeypot, or something else from there. So we're really not going through the slides as much. So I did see someone ask to increase them, but I just wanted to point out those 3 defensive methodologies, and we would get more into that as we kind of go through there. We are getting some notifications that some people can't hear the sound. Larry, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I hear you.
Okay, cool.
Yep, you guys are good.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive in a little bit. So when you guys join our class, we're actually going to give you a VM, a virtual machine that you're going to be able to access. It's going to look exactly like this. So you'll be able to, everything that I type, it says I'm not on. Okay, so I've got some people saying that we're good. So audio's good. Okay, so you'll get a system that's just like this. So everything that I do or that Larry does, you'll be able to duplicate exactly. Everything is set up exactly the same way. Every student's going to have the same VM. You're not going to have to worry about installing anything or whatever. Just be able to access it on the web, and you'll be good to go. So we'll go through a lot of the basics of how do we start our pen tests in general. How do you identify? How do you go from having absolutely no information, all the way to DA? And we walk you through each step of the way. So I want to walk through just kind of one of these attacks, and in the similar way that we would do during the class. So we're just kind of gave you a little bit of a preview of what's going to happen here. So we're going to introduce several tools to you as we go along. And the idea of the way the class is not to just show you a bunch of different things that are situational. We have it set up that you're going to start, and we're going to, for each piece of the puzzle, it's going to work from the previous thing that you just did. So we're not just doing random attacks, right? It's not just try this, try this, try this. We actually have an entire attack path that we're going to walk you through so that you can understand all of the different pieces and steps and everything it took to get to a domain admin. So I'm going to show you a little bit about this. And then when we go through the attack, we'll pause, and then we'll go in, and I'll show you the detection component. And we're specifically going to be using Kibana, which is a front-end interface for the Elasticsearch ELK stack. So we'll show you guys how to do some of that detections. And yeah, while we'll use ELK language, it generally translates relatively well to just about any SIM. All right, so when we're on a network, one of the first things we really want to do is figure out what's available to us. So when we get to the class, we'll kind of go over what those ranges look like and everything. But one of the first things that we always use is this tool called Nmap. Now, Nmap is a tool which is designed to do network scanning. So it is a very powerful tool. When I first got into penetration testing, it was one of those ones where I didn't fully understand all of the different components and what it meant and whatever, and I just kind of did the basic stuff, not realizing everything that was available. There is, I don't know if we have it installed. There is a application out there called ZenMap, which I like, and I actually had the opportunity to have the author of ZenMap attend one of our classes at Black Hat one year. So, or was it InfoSec World, Larry? Do you remember? I think that was Black Hat.
Yeah, I don't remember meeting him.
Oh, okay. So he attended one of our classes, and so he was the author for ZenMap, and it's a nice front-end graphical user interface that's basically allows you to, run the commands that you would, but from a graphical user interface there. And I thought I had it. opening, but maybe I didn't see ZenMap. Will this run? If it doesn't, we'll just move on. So ZenMap is a nice way to do that, but when you do a specific scan, it'll tell you what the parameters are. So there's a lot of different components that go into it. In the host discovery, you have a list scan, you have a ping scan, you have the option to not do a ping scan, you have different scan techniques, you have SS, ST, TA, and then you have different ports. So we're just going to cover a couple here real quick, and I just want to show you one of the different ways that I go through and do a pen test. So one of the first things I will set is my G port. Now, the G port by standard, if I look at the help, so G is a source port, okay? So it says use the given port number. So a lot of the things that we try to avoid is when we do a scan for a specific port to see if it's open, is to have the source port and the destination port be the same thing. We also want to try and avoid any type of traffic monitoring that might be in place at an organization. So we will oftentimes set our source port based on the environment that we're in. So if we're on an internal penetration test, we will oftentimes set this to 88, which is going to be your Kerberos traffic. So the idea is to try and blend in with a lot of the Kerberos traffic. If we're on the outside, however, Kerberos is not a typical external communication port, so that would not work very well. But DNS, or port 53, is. So a lot of times if we're doing an external scan, we'll set our source port to 53 for DNS traffic, or 88 for internal traffic. So that'll be that Kerberos traffic. The second option that I typically use is what's called a half open. And Larry, I think half open is the default now, right? I think it used to not be, but I think it is now, right?
Yeah, SynScan is the default if you don't select it.
Yep. So it's not necessary to do this, but I'm a creature of habit. So I like using the half open. Now, so the way that the half open works, okay, there is a handshake in TCP protocol, right? So in the handshake, it says SYN, and then it's SYNAC, and then ACK. So that's the three-way handshake, right? So that's a lot of the basic TCP protocol. So yes, -SS is default for non-root. So great question for you. I'll get to that in just a second. So SS is, what it's going to do is it'll send the SYN, and then when we get the SYNAC, we actually don't send the ACK. We just kill the termination, kill the protocol communication. The reason for that is that is not a full connect. A lot of the honeypots and things that are out there, they're only going to flag on a full connect. So the other connection, the other type there is ST, which is a full connect. Now, the half open could give you some false information, right? So it's based because we're just basing it off of getting that SYNAC. Whereas a full connect, or the ST option, will actually connect to the port. I've not been on an engagement to where I felt the need to do an ST. Larry, have you had to have an engagement where like the SS wasn't sufficient and you just had to do your scan with a full connect?
Yeah, not very often. Sometimes on the outside, if you're not seeing any ports open, it might be because they're blocking SynScan, so you might have to do a full connect just to get the right ports coming back.
Yep. So when by default, Nmap will use the TCP protocol. Okay, if you want to switch that, okay, it is going to be, let's do /.su. You'll have to specify the -su for UDP. By default, it's going to do a TCP scan, so you don't have to specify that. It's only going to be different if you do the UDP scan. And I only typically do UDP scans when I'm looking for a specific piece of hardware, typically going to be something that's a load balancer or some sort of FI device. I'm not looking for UDP traffic on Linux or Windows servers typically. So, but there are instances where you need to find it because that UDP traffic is there. The unfortunate reality with UDP traffic is UDP protocol, there's a joke out there. It says, knock, knock, who's there? UDP. Knock, knock, who's there? UDP. Knock, knock, who's there? It doesn't care if you respond to it. UDP is just one of those situations to where it just keeps going and going and going and going. And so the unfortunate reality is that a lot of times if I scan for something on UDP, it'll show me that it's available when it's not. And so UDP scans are a little bit harder to get your what we would consider a high fidelity detection that the host is there. But that's basically the way it is. So the next option that we'll do is so we set our source port. We'll do a half open. The next one that I do is PN. Now PN means don't send an ICMP. There was an engagement that I was on, and I was in 2 different zones. And so I was trying to map the systems that were on a separate zone from where I was located. And I thought that it would be just a great idea just to go ahead and do an ICMP sweep, just to kind of figure out what's going on. So that's a great question, Martin, and I'll get to that in a second. So as I was going to get ready to do this scan, I went ahead and launched it, and then all of a sudden the client came and they're like, "Hey, our entire system went down." And they're like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "I've done anything. I've just done an ICMP sweep. I'm just looking for hosts at this point." Well, come to find out that there was a 11-year-old router between the 2 zones that hadn't been rebooted in 3 years. And all of my ICMPs basically tipped the box over. And we don't like doing that, right? Like, we don't like looking for things. We don't like causing disruptions. I mean, yes, it wasn't necessarily, our fault, but, we like to make sure things are on. So I generally don't send those ICMP packets anymore when I do a lot of my host discovery. So we'll just assume that the host is up. The next thing that we do is a -n. Now, -n says don't do a DNS resolve. A lot of the times in situations, like, your scan's going to slow down a lot when you're doing that DNS resolution. And so oftentimes I'll just say -n, no big deal. We'll just I just only care about the IP address. I don't care about anything else like that. For the source port, to answer that question for the -G80, again, I would not set the source port to -G80. When you do normal TCP traffic inspection, like if you do a TCP dump or whatever, and you connect to a web server, generally your source port isn't set to 80. It's set to some random port. So it's one of those things when you look at like the connection statistics, especially like if you're in a Windows or whatever, that source port isn't going to be 80. That's part of the reason that I put 88 is oftentimes organizations won't be inspecting Kerberos traffic just because of the amount of traffic that there is. And that's not to say that we were 100% invisible. It is just generally one of those things that you have a greater chance of not getting detected if you try and make it blend in with that Kerberos traffic. Same with DNS. Yeah.
Can I jump in there? I was just going to mention that if you do a default Nmap scan, say you're scanning port 80 on a remote host, you're scanning port 445 or whatever, if you look at that in TCP dump or whatever, Wireshark, it's always going to look like it's coming from the same port. So the source port would be 80, the destination port would be 80. So that's very easy to detect, and that's like a default snort rule or something like that. So if they have something on the network that's looking for that, these are just some basic evasion techniques that we can do. So if we set that source port to be something static, that's very common on the network, like Ben mentioned, internally port 88, Kerberos traffic, externally DNS traffic, it's just one of the ways we can blend in. Unless they're doing some type of flow analysis, they see us sending thousands of packets across the network. There's really no way around that. So this is just a basic type of intrusion detection, evasion.
Yep. Thanks, Larry. Appreciate that.
Yep.
The next option is the port. So that's going to be the lowercase p. So one of the things that Larry and I do, and I think, Larry, you still do this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but me personally, I only scan one port at a time. I don't care if it's 100 or whatever, I will always do one port at a time. Are you still that way, or have you expanded out a bit?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So I will never do just the default Nmap scan, which does the top 1,024 ports. I won't do that unless I just don't care about getting detected. I will always do one port at a time. I do this for two reasons. One, as I'm mapping out a network or situation, there's certain attacks based off of what services are running. So I don't want to have to reduplicate my effort. So I'm going to put all of my web traffic into one file. I'm going to put all of my SMB into another file. I'm going to put all my FTP into another, all my telnet into another. All my databases will each have their own individual file. And so eventually I'll just begin creating files as I scan your network. This will reduce the chance of detection because I'm only scanning a single port, and it'll allow me to focus my attacks later on, and that way I'm not scanning all of the hosts again looking for trying to do an attack when the service isn't even running on the host. So I'll always do it. So one of my favorite ports to start with is 8080. So 8080 is one of my favorite because we get a lot of web application hostings like Jenkins or Tomcat. Apache Tomcat is one of our favorite ones. There was a long strain of engagements where just about everyone had a Tomcat server and they had default credentials on it. Now, those are becoming less and less common, but we still find them. So looking for those Tomcat boxes is a big one. So by default, the Tomcat port is 8080. We still find Tomcat on 80 and 8443 and whatever. But we usually start here. There are some other components that we can put in here for randomization of the host and throttling and slowing everything down. But this is basically the way that I start my scan. So it's always going to be setting that source port, do a half open, no ping, no DNS resolution, specifying the port. Now, one of the things that Larry and I like to do is make sure that we save our output. Sometimes we want to go back through that output. We can kind of do everything. So -O has a list of different outputs. Now we could just do G for greppable, I think N for normal. I just by default just do -OA. And what this does is this will create a file in all of the output types, so that way I can choose to go back later, and if I need one or the other, I don't have to rerun my scan. And then you just give it a name, and it'll automatically append the appropriate file type extensions. And then the last thing it needs is either a target or a range or a file consisting of targets or ranges. So at this point, for just this example, we're just going to point it to our 10.10.152.0/24. So you can type in an actual seeder in here if you really wanted to, or you could type in, a single host. So there's a lot more that we could put in here, but this is my default Nmap scan, and I kind of wanted to walk you through that, kind of explain the different parameters, what we were trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish, and kind of go from there. So I think we've answered just about every question that's come in over on Discord. So let's go ahead and run this, see if we can find anything. Okay, so you'll notice that when we first run this, we come back and you see a lot of filtered. OA does not have script kiddie format. You'll see that everything comes back as filtered, okay? So this is okay, and it's good, but the unfortunate reality is I don't want to have to sit there and sort through all of this. So one of the other options that we typically will put in here, and I do this after the port just because of I'm being pedantic, there's no real reason. But if you do a dash open, what this is going to do is it's going to limit my output. Yep, you guys are already ahead of me. Dash open to limit the output to only the ports that are open. So this is basically just a way of saying, I don't care if it's not filtered, or I don't care if it's filtered, I don't care if it's closed. I really only care if it's open. And there we go. So we can see here that this is the host. We have our 10.10.152.3. We can see that the HTTP TCP is open. Now, it doesn't tell us what the service is. If we wanted to see that, we could add a secondary parameter on here called SV. And what that'll do is that'll go ahead and grab the service banner, or the version of the service banner, and that slows your scan down a little bit. So it does have to do a connect at that point, grab the banner, and kind of do that. So as you can see here, this now pulled in the version, and as you can see, it is indeed an Apache Tomcat box. Yes, I scan 80 and 8080 separately. There's a reason for that. Is there are certain things where if I want to go in through Metasploit and scan, I will be typically targeting a single port. So if I'm doing the scan, I'm only going to run it against one port at a time. So I will scan all of my web ports independently. So we have our Apache Tomcat box. Okay. So one of the things we can do, just out of, just to go tech, and just open up our web browser, and we can navigate to it. So if we type HTTP 10.10.152.3.8080, seeing this screen is a good thing for us. We typically like to see what's available. I'm actually going to clear my cookies real quick, just to make sure. Cookies, yes. So, all right. So we like coming to this application. I like seeing this is here. And so one of the things that we typically look for is this manager app. It was supposed to have cleared my cookie. The connection, but I'd already logged in earlier just to make sure it was working. But we'll check again. Should pop up no, it would typically pop up, would you like to log in? And we would typically try and find some of the default passwords. So we can run through that list, but there's also a Metasploit way that we can do this as well. So what I want to do is I'm going to open up Metasploit, and we'll actually go through Metasploit, and Larry does a really good job of talking through this and how to use this. The unfortunate reality is we don't have that significant amount of time to walk through this. Yeah, but I only logged in within the last hour, so I'm not sure what's going on. It's okay. No big deal. We would still use Metasploit to try and find the credentials anyways. So one of the things we can do is say search for Tomcat MGR. And what this is going to do, and as of Metasploit 5, they've done a really neat thing where there's now a number next to this. And I think a student told us this, Larry. I don't know. I don't think I figured it out on my own. But it used to be before where you would have to type, use auxiliary scanner, blah, 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 and go to that thing. Well, now you can just, whatever number you want, you can say use 0, and it'll automatically put it in there. Now, the number that comes along with that is always based off of the search results. So if I search for something else, if I say search for MS17, my 0 is different now. So if I say use 0, it'll actually use this module and not the other module. So something to keep in mind. So in here we have several options. We'll go through all of these options as we Okay, so that's a good question. I'll get to that in a second, Stra. So there's several different options that are available to you. we leave just about everything here the default. We don't really have to worry about getting into, trying to change a bunch of different stuff. We don't really care. What we're really only concerned about is the R host file. The R port by default is set to 8080, and the output is a little skewed because of the font size for my terminal window here. So normally it looks a little bit cleaner than this. It's not necessarily skewed off, but the R port is set to 8080, so we're just going to leave that alone. We do have to set our R host value, and we also have to disable a fingerprint check. Okay. So before I move on, a couple questions came in is, how long would it take me to run a scan? So it does not take me very long to do my scans at all because I'm always going for the most common ports. The one person did mention that you can do every port scan in there. So if I come in this way, I'll make my font bigger, don't worry. If you do nmap and you specify a port, if you just do a dash, it would do every port. So the thing is, the reason that this works this way is that it allows you to put a from and a to. So if I come in here and I say port 1 to 99, it'll scan ports 1 to 99 up into and including 99. So if you just do the dash, it's basically saying do every port from 0 to 65535. Most people don't realize that when you do this, it's actually going to send out a 0 scan. So the thing is you can do the space after this, by the way. This will work exactly like this. So the thing is with this is that we'll hit a TCP 0. So keep that in mind. So one of those things that we also look at through some of the detections is someone trying to connect on TCP 0. TCP 0 does have a valid use. It's typically done, I think, with some routing protocols. So just keep that in mind. This would definitely not be OPSEC safe. I would never encourage you guys to do this unless it was one of those things where, like, sometimes I'll do it with a PCI assessment, just validating and making sure that I can't hit anything on a PCI zone from where I'm located. But this is definitely not OPSEC safe. So back to the original question is how long does it take? It doesn't really take me that long. I hit a lot of the main common ports. I also have a tool that I wrote that basically automates this, so I can still do one port at a time, but I'm not typing all the commands in each time. All right, so back to our host over here, or to the Metasploit console. So we're going to set our hosts, and we remember from our nmap scan that we did earlier that came back. So this is going to be on our 10.10.152.3 host. So that's this output right here. PN is no ping. Don't send a ping. No ICMP. So I'm going to say set our hosts, and we'll do it 10.10.152.3. We'll walk you guys through how to use Metasploit and what all the components go through. Again, we really don't have that much time today, but we did want to show you how we did this. There is another thing that we have to set here in the latest version of Metasploit, at least with this module. It tries to fingerprint Tomcat. If that's not set, it tries to go out and scan it and says, oh, it's not Tomcat, I'm not going to run. We're just going to set that off. We know it's Tomcat, so we want this module to do its thing. Once we're done and we have those parameters set, it's really straightforward. We just type run. And what this is going to do is it's going to go out to that box and it's going to try a bunch of different logins that we have available to you. The script that I have not released, that nmap script. I don't know. I guess I could. It's nothing super crazy. It's a little script called Red Wagon. It's named after Justin Elzy when he had to go on stage in Vegas and pull a red wagon. So there's really no rhyme or reason. I just call it Red Wagon, and it's I don't mind releasing that script. So as we can see, instead of us trying to go through and do all of the potential logins by ourselves, this script kind of does that for us automatically. And as you can see, we're always looking for that green plus sign, and we can see that the login was successful. Tomcat, Tomcat. So we now know that the password to log into this is Tomcat, Tomcat. Now, there's many different things that we can do here. There are some Metasploit modules, and I'll get into that in a second. One of the things that you can also do is just interact directly here. So you don't necessarily have to set up a interpreter shell or anything like that. The way that Tomcat works is you can take a JSP file and basically zip it into a WAR file, and then you can upload it. Well, there has been some open source code out there that basically gives you a command shell-like interface with a WAR file. So we'll let you guys figure out what those are and where they are, but I wrote one of my own, and I just basically called it C shell, just because it was a shell and I wanted to come up with a name. So this is my own variation of this, cshell.war. So we'll show you guys this in the class. And you just hit open and then deploy. And the reason I'm showing you this is I'm showing you why having a Tomcat in your environment with default credentials is very bad. Because at this point, I don't necessarily have to do anything Metasploit. At this point, I'm not exploiting anything. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. This is not an exploit. This is Tomcat. I'm using Tomcat exactly the way Tomcat was designed. And Tomcat is designed to run these WAR files. It just so happens I wrote code that will run commands at the command line. So if we click on this, for some reason, like it always comes up as not found because it never actually puts in the JSP. But if you do cshell.jsp, you can see we've got this nice little commands with JSP thing. So as one of the first things we always do is who am I? Press enter and you can get some output. And you can see that we are running as NT Authority system. We can also do other things like net user, qwinsta to see if there's anybody logged in on the system. And look at that, we've got a couple of users logged in. So we've got one user that's active. Oh, okay, so I'm gonna, so yes, Seth, we can set the verbose to false, but I would discourage you from doing that. And here's the reason why. Especially like if you're doing pen testing or if you're doing this assessment on your own, you want to have evidence that you didn't break something, right? So Larry and I both know that whenever we do a pen test, it is one of those things where if anything goes wrong, they want to make sure that it wasn't the pen testers that doing something. And so if you have verbose set to false, you won't, they'll be like, hey, did you log into this count 50 times? You're like, no, I only logged into it once. Well, show me. Well, if you don't have your verbose turned on, there's no evidence to show that you only attempted to log into that account once. And so me personally, I would definitely discourage turning verbose off. I would leave it on. It's always easy to filter out your logs later, and it's always that nice fuzzy warm blanket just to show that you didn't accidentally tip something over. All right, so we can see that we have some people in, and yes, someone did identify that this is indeed a reference to the Hackers movie. Hal, the character in the movie, did not have a last name. A little bit of movie trivia. The character did not, however, Penn Jillette played the actor Hal, and so I just gave him the name of Hal Gillette. Just a little bit of background there. So we do see we have a couple people logged in. We can also do some other things like this. Net user domain. So run this, and now we have all of the users. And as you can see, this is EMC or Ellingson Mineral Company. So, and we did just hack a Gibson, or attempting to hack a Gibson. So as you can see, we just dumped all of the users from the domain controller. So we can pull all of that information down. So that's always a good information that we have when we're looking for there. Piranha Mama, I think Larry can maybe answer that question for you. One of the other things that we can do if we have access is actually, build ourselves our own access. Or, like I said before, we can specify a shell here. So one of the things that we can do now that we have a Tomcat login is we can gain a shell remotely on here. Now, there are two of these here. And Larry, I have to look at my notes. Is it upload or is it deploy? I think it's upload, right?
Yeah, I think it's upload.
I think it's upload. So there are two of them here that it basically is going to upload a malicious war file. That's going to give me my shell, very similar to what I just did with my C shell. One doesn't work, and I think it's the deploy. I think it's the upload that we want to use. So it came back in our search as 17. So I can say use 17, and there we go. Now, in the latest version of Metasploit, they automatically configure a payload now. This is not something that they used to do, and I think that's even later than 5, Larry. I don't think that was at 5. I think that was just the most recent update.
For what?
I don't. So when they automatically defaulting your payload, that's something that they never did before.
Yeah, it's been the past year or two, I think.
Yeah. So a couple things with the way that this works is we are going to upload a file to our Tomcat box, but we want to get a shell back to us. So we have to set a couple things in this. So one of the things we have to set is our username and password. So we'll set HTTP username to Tomcat because that's what we found out in the previous module. We'll set the HTTP password to Tomcat. And then the other thing we need to do is we need to, our port on this current module is set to 80. Well, we know that the Tomcat is running on 8080, so I have to set that. So if I look at my options again, we can see I've set my username, I've set my password, set 8080. I don't really have to change anything else, but I do need to point it to that our hosts. Set our host 10.10 152.3, and that pretty much sets up the exploit. The second thing we have to set up here is the payload. Now, this is currently set to a Java payload, but that's really not what I want. So the way that we change this is by changing our target. So if I look at show targets, we would have done our research ahead of time and just know that this is a Windows box. So I'm going to set my target to 1, which will change that to a Windows. And then I can set my payload to the appropriate thing. So if I say set payload Windows Meterpreter. By the way, if you ever want to remember how to spell Meterpreter, it's Meterpreter. You'll never misspell it again. Meterpreter. Reverse HTTP. There's a reason we use HTTPS instead of HTTP is so typically people aren't inspecting that HTTPS traffic, so there's a greater chance of going undetected. So the other thing it needs is the local host, the L port. So I'm going to set my L host. Here's a little trick, by the way. If you know the first part of your IP, you can just type the first octet dot and tab, and it'll put your IP address in there. Save you a little bit of typing there. Set L port 443. I'm sorry. All right, so we're going to do this final hack, and then I'm going to show you one of the detections in there that we kind of go from there. So one of the things we can do now is do exploit. And if all works well, we should get a thing. Oh, we have to do set fingerprint check to false again. And then exploit. And if all works well, we should have a shell. One of the things we can do is sysinfo. And there we go. So that's a nice little way of getting access to there. We can also drop into a shell. One of the things that I like to do is also interact with the desktop or whatever, I am not afraid to get out there and open up an RDP session. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop in here. I'll just show it as an example just so that we can move on because we don't have a significant amount of time. So I'm just going to show you that I am logged into the Tomcat box. And as you can see, I've compromised Hal's username, but here's Dave Murphy. So one of the things that I like to do, and this is not an exploit. If I see a domain admin logged in and it's disconnected, and that's what this state is disc, D-I-S-C, I'll actually hijack their RDP session as long as you're set to a local admin. So if you're set to a local admin, you can do this. I'm going to make my font a little bit bigger so you guys can see. Let's see. 28 should make it bigger. All right. So one of the things that you can do is use a thing called RDP hijack. It's basically there's a tool out there called TSCon. Oops. So looking at TSCon is this attaches a user session to a remote desktop session. Well, so basically this is a nice way to do this. Now, normally it's only giving you permission to a session to which you own, but if it's running as system, it basically allows you to do this with anyone. So what I can do here is I can create a service and have it start and then kind of take control of it. So I'm going to show you that. So right now, if I type who am I, you can see that I'm Hal Gillette. Bring up my live chat. And then I'm going to do query user. And you can see that I am sitting on RDP-TCP6. Dave Murphy, his ID is 2-3. So the way that we do this is we create a new service, and so we can use that with the screate command. And what we're going to do is I'm going to say hijack bin path equals, and then we'll say cmd.exe/k tscon. I'm going to put the ID that I want to steal, which is 2, and then I'm going to point it to the destination of whatever's in this session name for me. So I'm going to say RDP-TCP #6 and close it. So right now, all this is going to do is create a process in there called, or a service in there called hijack. Well, because I'm an admin, I can start that. So net start hijack. Okay, now watch closely. Okay. So the screen just blinked, and if I open up command prompt, you can see that I'm now Dave Murphy. So even though I don't know Dave's username or his password, because I found a system to where I was local admin, I was actually able to steal that session. So now I can do anything as Dave Murphy on this. So this is one of the ones that we use. In fact, I just used it on an engagement and was able to get domain admin this way. So this is one of the things that we like to look at. So if you are a domain admin or you're a system admin, don't just disconnect your RDP session because I might steal it from you. Okay? So this is some of the things that we're going to go through. We're going to talk about how we can do this. No, I'm actually DA at this point. So I'm actually, so if I do net user fake open 24/7 add domain, and I just added a user to the domain controller. So I am DA at this point, so I could do all sorts of crazy things. The last command, well, that's a great question. What was the last command? So let's go ahead and take a look in Elk real quick, and let's try and see if we can see some of the stuff that went on there. So one of the things that we can do that we typically like to see is, so that's correct. So I could go from local admin. So and this is only if a domain account is logged in and disconnected, right? So that's what we did. We had a domain admin log into that system where I was local admin on, okay? I wasn't DA. Hal Gillette is not DA. But because I'm local admin, I can create a service and I can use that TSCon to hijack his disconnected session, and now I'm sitting underneath his credentials. I haven't stolen his credentials. I don't know what it is. So the good mitigation to that is don't leave your system, don't leave your DA account logged in. Always log out. Don't just disconnect. So you can force a disconnect, I think, after so long, but you know, this is one of those things that you really want to go back and communicate to your system admins, to your IT admins, whatever, is that anyone that has local admin on a box can steal your session. One of the things that I like to do is, like, if I get access to a box and impersonate a user, I'll try and get someone from help desk or someone to log in. I'd be like, hey, you know, I'm having this issue, whatever, and you know, I'm having a connection issue. Well, one of the things that I can also do is I can log out that user as, even if they're DA, and I can just I can actually disconnect them and then try and hijack their session before they get back in. So, yep, that's it. Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. So that's one of those neat things that you have out there. So yes, this is definitely one of those situations where communication with your team is important to make sure that they know, don't leave your session disconnected. It can be stolen, and very, very easily. So we know that the command that was out there was called screate. So one of the things that we typically like to do is look for this. Now, I also want to pause real quick and mention we have used 0 exploits. None. This works on a fully patched system, okay? And your EDRs aren't going to catch this because I'm a local admin. I just created a service, okay? This is all built into Windows. I'm just using the stuff from Windows to my advantage, okay? Well, if I can already, so the question was, does a hijack require remote control to be enabled allowed? If I can RDP into the server, then that's already there, right? So this only works if RDP is enabled, right? So we want to be able to detect this type of behavior, right? And so this is where I would typically look for things like screate, okay? So this is where the command line auditing comes into play. If you are not ingesting your process command lines, this would be one of those attacks that you would be very well blind to, okay? So this is going to be event ID 4688. And this is going to be a great way for you to identify that someone did a hijack. Now, they're probably not going to create the service as hijack, but looking for things like TSCon with a dest, I can almost guarantee you that there's not going to be a legitimate business use case for that, because there's no reason for you to create a service to hijack this, okay? If you're an admin and you want to take control of a system, you go in and you right click and you say remote control, right? There's no legitimate need for this. So this is one of those detections that you could put into your environment right now today, and it's a super high fidelity. You should not get any results with this. I would seriously be concerned if you got any results with something coming back with TSCon with a /dest. Okay, so this is again, and a lot of people are mentioning in there, this is the living off the land binaries and scripts, or LOLBAS project. The one question was, how did we figure out what the session ID was? If you looked back, I did a query space user. Now I've already disconnected, so you can see. So this gives me the ID and it gives me my session name. So query space user. All right. So when we're looking to try and hunt for this type of activity, we're specifically going to be looking for things like SC and create. We can also look at new services being created with that event ID 7045. So if I come back in here and I change this to event, they changed it, right? Event code. I think it's that way. Hold on, let's see. I think they changed their stuff. 46 event _ ID. Event ID is 7045. Okay, you'll see in our 7045 events, you'll see that we did have a service created. So we can check this in two different locations. One is the 7045, which is going to be a new service created, or the 4688, which is going to be a process execution. So the reason I would encourage you to look at it from both is that if I don't use the command line to do this and I go into the services and I right click and say new, create a new service and do it that way, that's not going to show up in the command line, right? So that's not going to show up in your 4688, but that still will show up in your 7045 of a new service created, where you can really look for that image path specifically to anything with tscon in it and destination. So looking for this component and this component is going to be your indicator that someone might be doing something malicious. Okay, so a couple of questions. Let's go back. Yeah, good point. Q user is another way to do that as well. So how is the command line auditing enabled? Well, so with Kibana, they have these things called beats. So if you go to elastic.co, I am not using Sysmon for this. So Sysmon is doing it. I'm doing straight Windows event forwarding. So Elastic has these things here called beats, which is, they've changed their site significantly. Let's see. Oh, beats. Okay. So they have these things called beats. So they have a file beat, they have a packet beat, they have a winlog beat, they have an audit beat, they have a heartbeat. So all I've done is I've installed winlog beat on all of my Windows boxes within the lab. And so we have this set up specifically so that you have auditing, so that everything you do in the class, you'll be able to go back, and I'm going to show you guys how to build that detection. Everything from the Tomcat brute force attack that we did, to the uploading of the malicious war file, to the, obviously, a lot of the commands that we run on the command line. So as we go through the attack path, I'm going to give you guys the information and tools so that you guys can take that back to your environment and build a lot of those detections all along that attack path, so that way you have a better insight well before I get to the point of hijacking a domain administrator's account. Larry, did you want to add anything to that? I kind of running short on time there.
Yeah, I think we're good. Did a good job.
So I'm going to take this last 5 minutes or so and see, is there any questions that anyone that would like to put into the Discord, or if has been asked on the webinar here? I think we're good, right? Next there. So file beat would be to monitoring a file, not for the Windows event forwarder. Winlog beat is what you're going to use to forward those Windows event logs. And even if you had Sysmon, Winlog beat would still forward those Sysmon events for you as well. Yep. So the command to it's net start hijack. So after you run that sc create command, that will just create it, and then you just start the service. Now, understand that's not OPSEC safe either, right? So if I go back over to my box, so let's go back over there, okay? So, and this might be good for your DFIR people. And if I come over here and I do event viewer, I'm sorry, not event viewer, but services MSC, right? So it's going to leave this sitting here, okay? So there's a process here that's still here. So that's one of the things. Now, so what you would typically want to do at this point is sc delete hijack, right? So I'm not operating as a admin. So this is one of those things where you would want to go in and delete those things if you are the bad guy. But again, you're going to get that file create or the service creation and service deletion events, so long as you're doing that, that's there. But if I cannot, I hope that I have communicated effectively and showed you how easy this was to not ever leave a privileged account, especially a domain admin account, logged into a system. Don't just disconnect. Make sure you click that log off button. Any other questions that we have that we could show you? We're obviously going to go through a lot more as we go through the class. Larry's going to be able to show you a lot more components that kind of go into that. We'll definitely dive into a lot more of the detection components. But these are some of the fun ones that we like demoing. It's always one of those ones that kind of go from there. To close a port, you would actually just turn off the service that's running. You can also use a network device that would block access to that port from specific sources. So the name of the class, and I think there was already a link to it posted. I think it was in the pins right at one of the tops, and I'll just copy that and paste it again. So it's this one is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hi, Ben, Larry. Thank you again for being with us today. If you go to our website at www.wildwesthackinfest.com, and then under the Deadwood tab, there's conference training section, and you can go through there and look for all of our training, including yours.
Yep, perfect. And I did put that into the Discord chat if you need that, and I'll see if I can put that here in this chat. Here, perfect. I think I know how to technology. Well, guys, thanks so much. And what I will do is I'm going to go ahead and turn off my display, and I'll hand it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you both so much for being here today. Absolutely. And all of you guys who tuned in today for our Hackin Cast, thank you so much. Velda, did you want to talk a little bit about the conference coming up?
Just a reminder, it's September 23rd through the 25th for the actual con. 2-day training on the 22nd and 23rd. And a reminder, we have the roundup coming up on October 22nd. We are looking for CFPs as well as registration is open.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Lots of fun things over here at Wild West Hackin Fest.
Lots of fun things. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. But thank you again, Ben and Larry. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Yep, it's our
Thanks,
pleasure.
everyone. Have a great day.
Looking forward to the event. We'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.